horses are used to pull a carriage, blinders are put on them. They constrain their field of view. It helps them ignore distractions that might startle them so that they're easier to control. And what we have to see is that apart from Christ, we are all under someone else's control. I mean, we don't wear physical blinders, but our grasp of truth, our understanding is constrained. Paul talks about that in 2 Corinthians 4, verses 3 and 4. He says this, and even if our gospel is veiled, it's veiled to those who are perishing. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Now, God of this world is one of the ways that Paul refers to Satan, to the devil. And if we look back, even in the Garden of Eden, back in Genesis 3, Satan takes the form of a serpent, and he seeks to distort Eve's understanding of the truth. That's his goal. That's how he works. So once she and Adam succumb to that temptation, their descendants all become subject to this constrained perspective. In other words, we view life through a fundamentally selfish lens. We're hindered from seeing the glory of God and of Christ. So how does this constrained view of truth come out? How does it affect someone's life practically? Well, I think we find an expression of that here in Acts 21. We start with verses 27 through 30. Paul had gone to the temple. We learned about that last time, to present offerings, along with 4 Jewish Christian men after a 7-day period of purification. And Luke tells us this: when the 7 days were almost completed, the Jews from Asia, seeing him in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who's teaching everyone everywhere against the people and the law and this place. Moreover, he even brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place." For they had previously seen Trophimus, the Ephesian, with him in the city, and they supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple. Then all the city was stirred up, and the people ran together. They seized Paul and dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. So these Jews are, like Paul, they're from Asia Minor, or modern-day Turkey. They're not Christians, they're Jewish believers, but they make these claims against Paul, and none of them are true. He didn't oppose Jewish people, the Old Testament law, or the temple. When we look through his letters, we see that he longed for his fellow Jews to be saved. He believed that the law was their guardian until the coming of Christ. He saw the temple as the foreshadowing of the church as God's dwelling place on earth through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. But these Jewish men, they don't try to understand Paul's teaching. They just assume the worst about him. They treat him as an enemy. And so when they see him in the temple, they immediately jump to the false conclusion that he has violated the law by bringing in a Gentile. Now, I think we have to say that it seems like a lot of people have a similar bias against Christians today, that they're not interested in understanding the message, that they assume the worst, that they might treat us as an enemy. How should we respond to that? The temptation is to respond in kind, to treat them as they would treat us, not trying to understand, assuming the worst, jumping to false conclusions. And I think we see a lot of Christians doing that. Even some church leaders. And so we kind of develop our own constrained outlook of the other side as enemies. And it may seem like a Christian thing to do, but I have to say that approach ends up distorting the gospel. Whether we do it intentionally or unwittingly, only God knows, but I suspect that Satan is pleased by it. Because we'll see in a moment that even as he's suffering this attack, Paul doesn't respond that way, in that constrained way. The theme of our series is that his unhindered life, that because he knows the truth, he understands that those people have been spiritually blinded. And he feels Christ-like compassion for them and tries to reason with them. So again, everyone starts at this stage of this constrained perspective on the truth. And the next stage shows that the process of moving forward is not easy.